Hi, I'm Simon. Thanks for tuning in to The Ordinary Filmmaker. Subscribe to receive notification of new videos like this one so you don't miss any news, rumors, gear reviews, or tutorials. And to make things just a little bit more interesting, I'm giving away a brand new Canon EOS R5 full-frame mirrorless camera to one lucky viewer. Details are in the description down below, or you can watch this video here, but please read the terms and conditions as there are some age and location restrictions. And now, for a brief look at this week's news. The first thing I want to talk about is actually a rumor, and that's that Sony's going to be dropping the FX3 cinema camera, entry-level cinema camera, next week on the 23rd. The internet is awash with tons of rumors about what this what this camera is going to be, but what it seems to be is, if you can imagine the A7S III in a cinema body, that's pretty much what we're going to get. 4K 120, it's going to have IBIS, but it's not going to have ND filters, and the price is going to be around 3,900 euros. Go ahead and watch this video here if you want to see the full leaked specs on this camera, but I do want to caution you. When it comes to Sony rumors, the track record has been anything but trustworthy and reliable. Just think back to last year with the Sony A7S III. Right up until when Tanaka spoke, it looked like it was going to have anywhere from a 15 to 39 megapixel sensor with a quad Bayer filter. That didn't pan out at all. And so that's why I'm saying, just wait a week. Let's see what the FX3 actually has before we go ahead and jump to conclusions. But speaking of news, Blackmagic Design went ahead and announced just a couple of days ago the Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro. And this camera looks quite impressive. Up to 6K 60 frames per second. It's going to take the 5 color science from the 12 Ursa 12K machine, and it's going to bring it into the Pocket 6K. And not only that, you're also going to get ND filters. And one of the biggest things that I think really helps with workflow is you're going to be able to output an Apple ProRes or 12-bit Blackmagic RAW. And I think that's huge for workflow. I think it makes a really, really big difference. So to be able to not have to transcode, which can take an awfully long time, especially with a video like this. I'm currently shooting in C-Log, and that's 970 bits per second. That's a ton of information. So editing without dropping frames, that's not happening. And of course, I do have to transcode that. So how much is this camera going to cost? Well, about the same price as the Canon EOS R6. It's going to sell, or the list price is $2,500. Now, it doesn't have IBIS, and autofocus, I'm not exactly sure how that is. The previous models, the autofocus wasn't the best, but still, this is huge. And I think for companies like Canon and Sony and Panasonic, they really need to take notice of this Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K Pro camera. It's just incredible. I'm really, I think it's an incredible piece of kit. All right, now let's talk about something else. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, let's advance the screen here so I know what's next. Just give me a second here. It's a little different shooting outside. I don't have everything right by my fingertips. You guys hear those birds? Spring can't be too far away because we're starting to see a lot more beers. Yeah, there's a lot more beers too. We're starting to see a lot more birds out, and that's a positive sign. But I've got something I want to talk to you about a little later. You guys are probably going to really like. It's a spring contest. Anyways, let's take a look back at the news. Oh, one other thing about the Blackmagic that I forgot to mention. The display, it's a larger screen, larger than what I have with the R5, and it's also 1500 nits. So let's baseline that a minute. If you're talking about most external monitors or recorders, you're generally topping out at about 1000 nits. So 1500 nits is pretty good. Now let's talk about CP+, which is next week from the 25th through to the 28th. And the big news is actually the absence of news. If I can believe everything I'm hearing, and it sounds pretty correct, because normally by this time we'd have lots of leaks if Canon was having anything coming out. And we'd also start to hear some noise on the channel saying, hey, I can't tell you anything, but pay attention, something's happening. None of that's absolutely silence. And I don't know if Canon's taking a book out of Sony's playbook about not leaking anything whatsoever and they've changed course. I kind of doubt that. I really think what's happening is Canon's having an awful lot of trouble with their supply chain, trying to get enough components to produce and deliver the products that we want to purchase. The R5 is still constrained, so I really do think that that's the problem. When we hear about production line problems, I don't think it's actually necessarily with the actual die process or putting the pieces together. I think it's actually to do with getting the components to put these pieces together. So we'll just have to wait and see. But Nikon is supposed to be dropping some product announcements at CP+. There's rumors of an APS-C mirrorless body. There's also rumors of lenses coming. And what about that Z9? Well, I don't think we're going to get the Z9 announcement, but I do believe that they're going to drop a hint. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what that's going to be. And the next bit of news that we got this week, a Japanese patent showed 6 prime lenses for the Canon RF mount. Not a lot of surprises in here, talking about the 24mm. In this chart here, this is all the 33 rumored lenses that we have right now. But what this does do is it's helped validate the 24mm and the different focal lengths. It also validates some other lenses. Take a look at the 35mm. We got another option there. And the 50mm f1.4. And of course, we do have a new prime 28mm. Now, I wouldn't expect any of these lenses to be coming out this year. In fact, the previously rumored lenses to come out this year, I think half of those are going to be pushed into next year. And we also got an update, or a rumored update, that the next M processor is going to be the M1X, and this is going to have twice the GPU cores, CPU cores, and twice the execution units. And this is supposed to be going into the MacBook Pro, some of the desktop models, but I don't know if it's going to be going into the the Mac Pro, that overly beautiful looking machine, but way overpriced machine. So we'll just have to see about that. In terms of memory, I don't know. They're hinting at 16 gigabytes for the chip, but you know, if you're going to get a MacBook Pro 16-inch, even though the memory's a lot more efficient, I'd still want to have 32 gigabytes if I was a video editor, and I am. So we'll just have to wait and see what that brings. Like staying informed? Subscribe and choose all notifications to get notified as soon as I release a new video. But now, it's time to answer your questions. If you'd like your question answered in an AMA session, go ahead and submit it in the comment section down below, and I could be reading off your question next week. And now for our first question. Robert asks, any comments about the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro? Robert, I think it's a terrific camera. I think there's some really wonderful things here. The first thing I'm going to call out is not the 6K 60 frames per second, but the fact that you can record in professional codecs like Apple ProRes and Blackmagic 12-bit RAW. I mean, just think about that for a minute. Who else does that? Sony doesn't do that. Canon doesn't do that. Panasonic doesn't. I think that's a really big plus. You also have professional XLR inputs. You've got the color science of the Ursa 12K. There's that as well. This camera is purpose-built for filmmakers, for videographers that don't have a huge budget. The only things I'd be cautious about, and this is just from my personal workflow, is how well does the autofocus perform? Because for me, that's mandatory. I'm a one-person crew, and I don't want to be focusing on the focusing. I want to be able to focus on the filming, the subject, and everything I'm doing. Another thing too, it also comes with ND filters, 2, 4, and 6 stops. And of course, you get the trustworthy, tried and true Canon EF mount. Now, some people might want the RF mount, but you've got so much glass for the EF mount. I think this is great value. It's just $100 more than the Canon R6, and it looks to be well over $1,000 less than Sony's FX3. Now, we don't know the full capabilities of the Sony FX3, but once Sony announces the FX3, I'm going to very quickly do a video comparing these two cameras, because I don't know, the sense I'm getting right now is the Blackmagic has got a home run here. Alex asks, have you tried Lumafusiuon for iPad for editing videos? If yes, could you show your workflow? No, I haven't. Everything I shoot is pretty much 4K, and I find that editing on an iPad, at least the one I have, it's the entry level, it's not fast enough, it doesn't have enough storage. It's not really equipped to do the job. All the editing I do is either on a MacBook Pro or an iMac Pro. I need that heavy-duty, heavy-lifting stuff. And I know some of these newer iPads with the latest M processor, or the, it's not the M processor on the, what do they call it in the iPads? The X processor? I can't remember, but either way, I know that the new tablets are more than fast enough to handle it, but you know, I like a bigger screen. To me, that real estate matters. Having a 27-inch 5K monitor really helps when I'm editing. So I haven't edited any video on an iPad, whether it be iMovie or Lumafusiuon, none of it at all, and so I can't comment, I'm sorry. Shrijan asks, when the A7S III came out, everyone was talking about a 12 megapixel sensor and how big pixels help get better dynamic range and low light performance. But after seeing the Alpha One, it seems like it has more to do with processor and not with sensor. What are your thoughts? Well, first of all, I think since 2020, there's been a huge jump in capabilities for stills hybrid cameras and video cameras. And the A7S III is a terrific camera. I'm shooting with the R5, and let's look at one capability, and that's detailed 4K video. The R5 and the A7S III both do a terrific job. Now with the R5, I'm using 4K HQ, so that's 8K downsampled video. The A7S III doesn't need to do that downsampling to get detail. Because of its architecture, it's able to produce that high detail by just using a 12 megapixel sensor. But the R5 is built primarily as a stills camera, and it's highly capable as a stills camera, but it still produces very detailed video. Now, the architecture of how these two companies approach detailed 4K video is very different, but the end result, the output, the outcome, it's the same, detailed video. Now, I'll give the Sony credit because the Sony doesn't overheat. Now, neither does my R5, not in this temperature. It's what, -8 right now? There's no way this thing's going to overheat. But if I was in a tropical environment, then the R5, I wouldn't be relying on it for video. I'd get a cinema camera, or I'd consider the Sony A7S III. Some other thoughts on the heat. One thing you really need to consider is where you're going to be shooting, what environment you're going to be in. And if this is going to be a professional line of work for you, you need to get away from one camera to rule them all. You need to look at potentially getting a cinema camera or a camcorder to focus on video, and then get a camera like the R5 or the A7 IV as your stills camera, or the S1. Because trying to get a camera to do everything isn't going to work. There's a compromise, and you're either going to lose on video or you're going to lose on photo. So identify what your capabilities are for both stills and video. Identify a roadmap for yourself. Maybe get something like an A7S III or an R5 for now, but eventually you're going to want to move into multiple camera bodies to get the results you're really looking for. And what I would try to do is stick to one brand, so that way you can move the lenses between. So if you're with Canon, for example, if you go to their cinema line, you can take the EF lenses and bring them over to their cinema line. And that's really, really huge. It's going to prevent you from spending a ton of money on two different systems. Albert asks, why is it so hard for Canon to develop wide lenses like the 16mm f1.8 you mentioned, especially with image stabilization? I don't believe this is hard for Canon at all. They produce much more difficult lenses like the 1200mm f5.6. Today, it's all about prioritization, because there's such a they're facing so many issues with their supply chain, getting components, trying to produce the cameras, trying to have a steady workflow. So many countries are under quarantine, or factories are shut down. It's hard to get components. So right now they're trying to focus on what are the big money makers? How do they stay afloat? How do they generate positive cash flow? That's the primary concern. And you know what? A 16mm f1.8 or a 24mm f1.8 is not going to solve their cash flow problems. The R5 is very important. The R6 is very important. I think the R1 will be important, but not as important as an APS-C R system camera. And I really wish, I'm kind of surprised that Canon isn't going to be releasing this at the CP Plus, because it's cameras like the Canon 90D, the 80D that are the big sellers. These are the ones that are always in the top 10 on Amazon, and they bring in an awful lot of money. So I really do hope that they're able to get some of these cameras out the door. Right now, Canon's been absolutely silent, but it's not an issue with them being able to develop it. Canon is number one or in the top 3 worldwide when it comes to developing patents. So they're researching, they're developing really innovative products. And the RF mount is a very good mount, so it's just prioritization. Look, I feel you. I really want the 16mm. I think an STM will give me more than enough detail for vlogging. It'd be lightweight, and you know, anywhere from f1.2 up to 2.8 would be more than sufficient for me. Ashanti asks, what do you think is the chance that Sony will announce the A7 IV next week? And if not, when? Oh, I'd say it's about a 17% chance we're going to get it next week. I was really hoping we were going to see it at CP Plus. I just finished talking about the constraints that Canon's facing with their supply chain, from components to workforce. Sony also is facing some of the same issues. Now, they seem to be doing a better job of announcing products. It looks like the Alpha One is going to be coming. We'll be able to buy the Alpha One. They announced that just a couple of weeks ago. Now we're going to get into the FX3. So Sony's making a lot of news. They're dominating the news cycle, but as far as the A7 IV next week, I'd say it's around a 17% chance. I would expect some sort of leak saying it's coming. So when? I would expect probably by May. Probably by May we'll have an announcement, and availability could be, you know, middle, late summer. Oliver asks, do you think we'll see any Canon mirrorless cameras in the next month being released? Also, is the R7 replacing the M series cameras, or will we see an EOS M7? A lot of questions there. Well, first of all, I don't think we're going to get anything from Canon next week. I really wish we did. But here's the thing with Canon, when we usually know months ahead of time if Canon's coming out with something because the leaks are just crazy. So unless Canon's put a stop to that, I don't think we're going to get anything from Canon meaningful next week. Now, as far as the EOS M, that one's kind of up in the air like a bouncing rubber ball. It's 1 week they're going to be retiring it. The next week is no, they've got something else. They're going to come up with something really incredible. And the last I heard from Canon rumors is they're coming out, what Craig thinks is going to happen is they're going to come out with a completely different design. The rumor stated that the new M system camera coming out is going to be completely taking a different look at the M system, rethinking it. And what the recent patent shows is more or less a gimbalized type camera. So you basically hold it in a gimbal form. It's completely rotatable, separate from the lens, and you can attach different lenses. It's an interchangeable lens camera, but it's completely rethought out, as you can see by these blueprints here that are from the patent. So I don't think the M system is dead yet, but in terms of what the roadmap is, we just have to wait and see. I think the rumors are all over the place, but I do like that patent. It does look very, very interesting. And I think the one more thing, mirrorless cameras in the next month. Oh, I would really hope so, but if we don't see anything at CP+, I don't expect to see anything from Canon until about April, May. It really is a tough year. It's affecting all of us. And, hopefully we'll get something. I was really expecting a lot of big things at CP+ this year, but that certainly isn't working out to be the case. M. Slope asks, I don't know if you've already covered this, but what's your opinion on the EOS R5 versus the A7S III? Well, I think they're both very good cameras, and I want to own both of them. I'm working on trying to get the A7S III into my studio. I've actually been working with Sony Canada to try to get a loaner in for a couple of weeks so I can just shoot with it. Shoot outside, shoot inside. But let's think of use cases. Let's think of the different actors that would be using these. I see the R5 as primarily a stills camera-focused camera. It does really good video, but it's aimed at photographers, wedding, event, all that sort of stuff. 45 megapixel sensor. It produces really, really terrific results with good video. But the Sony A7S III is all designed and architected around video. You've got that 12 megapixel sensor, which can still produce good stills. I'm not saying it can't. It does a good job, but compared to the R5, let's be honest with each other, the R5 is a better stills camera. But when you see the video that the A7S III can produce, this full-frame mirrorless camera, it produces really great results. It can produce 4K, 120 without overheating in most modes. Yes, Dan Watson got it to overheat in some situations, but if you're going to be in hot climates or if you're going to be doing a lot of shooting in the summer and you're going to be doing a lot of video, you're going to want the A7S III, even with the latest firmware update 1.1 and even 1.2 is what I've got right now. If I was making my money off this camera, I wouldn't rely on it for video during the summer months. Yes, for photos, I think it's great, but for video, I'd probably go with a cinema camera like the C100, C200, the C70, or I'd consider getting the A7S III. The only problem with getting the A7S III and then having a Canon camera, now I've got to support multiple different lenses, and that's a definite bad thing. But I think they're good. What I really recommend you doing is identifying the capabilities that you want to shoot, the environments you're going to be shooting in, and then compare both cameras. If you take a look at my video where I compared or reviewed in depth the R5 with the R6 and the EOS R, that'll give you an example of how I went about with the capabilities in creating a heat map. So take a look at that to give you an idea, but I think they're both, and hopefully before too long, before the summer's out, I'll own an A7S III and I'll have it alongside the R5. But fingers crossed that in the next month or so, I'll actually have one in my studio. Wouldn't that be great? I told you guys I'm planning on getting the A7S III. It's just with a small channel, there's only so much revenue, and the A7S III with a, let's say a 24-70 f2.8, it's not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. So, if I buy that, then there's a whole lot of other things I can't buy for the channel. Really good question. Gerald asks, how's your health? I hope you fully recovered and are doing well. Well, I am feeling a whole lot better, but at the same point, I'm feeling a little bit in the doldrums. Here we are, February the 20th, month 4 of winter. There's snow everywhere, not a sign of spring, other than a few more birds showing up, and there's always that. I'll be honest with you, I'm having a tough time. Normally it's tough this time of year just getting through a long, dark winter. The days are getting longer, which is nice. Well, the temperatures are definitely colder now. They should be getting warmer. But this whole situation that we're all facing on a daily basis, it's tough. It's tough for me. I know it's tough for you. One of the reasons I am producing so many videos is once I'm done work, it gives me something else to focus on. So I'm not thinking about the situation. I don't want to think of, I'm tired of it. It's just been going on so long. So it's really starting to wear me down. And I thought, well, what could I do to help you guys? I appreciate you're asking about my health, but what about your health? What can I do to help perk you guys up a little bit? Do you remember last year, I think it was around March, I came up with the idea of a spring challenge. And my challenge was go out there, capture spring, take a minute, 2 minutes, doesn't matter, don't do an hour. It's up to you though. I'm not going to put time limits on it. And capture spring. I don't care if you're in a city, if you're in the countryside, and if you're saying, well, Simon, I'm in a condo, I can't really capture spring. Sure you can. Sure you can. Have you thought about buying some seeds and growing some plants indoors? Some of these seeds germinate very quickly within like 7 days and they grow very quickly. You could do a time lapse of plants growing. You could do various things from the balcony. The whole point of this is to get us thinking about rebirth, about things picking up, about returning to a normal life. This year is unlike any others. I myself, like many others, after about the middle of February, towards the end of February, I start to feel down because the days are so dark, it's so cold, and this year is even worse. So I'm going to have a contest, and I'm going to have some really unique prizes. I'm working with Angelbird, and this is what's tentative right now. I will firm everything up in a separate video talking about the Spring Challenge. I do want your feedback, though, but the prize is going to be one Angelbird CF Express 500 gigabyte card and an Angelbird CF Express card reader. So that'll go to the winner. I'm not sure how to do the winner yet. I'm thinking of potentially going through and reviewing them myself, presenting them to you, and then using a poll, selecting what I believe are the top 5, and then letting you vote on what you think is the best video. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section down below. I haven't scripted that video yet, but next week, sometime next week, probably Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, I'll publish the video about the spring contest, details about the prizes, terms, conditions, and all that stuff. And to simplify, to get it to you a little quicker, instead of having Angelbird ship the prize to me and then me ship it out, what I'm going to do is I'll get your information. We can do that through Facebook, so you don't have to put it in the comment section. You don't want to be broadcasting your address. And then I'll send it to Angelbird, and they'll ship it directly to you. And I think that is a good way. Look at me. I'm smiling already. I think that's a great way to change the narrative here, to get us feeling a little bit better, to get us thinking of spring and rebirth and coming out of this thing. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section down below. John asks, for on-the-go vlogging, recording audio separately and syncing in post versus using an onboard mic or wireless receiver, what are the advantages and disadvantages of each in your opinion? Which results in better audio quality? Well, I'm going to speak in a generalization here, but preamps in stills, hybrid, and DSLR cameras, they're not very good. If you want to get the best audio quality, use something like I'm using. I'm using a Tascam here, and it records audio right into a base unit right here. And so I don't have to worry about preamp. Not only that, it does some processing. The stuff I would normally do in post, I have it do here with filters, gain control, all that stuff is done right in the unit. Yeah, it is mounted to me here. Thought I forgot the audio for a minute. It's all taken care of, mounted right in here. And I think, well, I know that's going to give you the best audio quality. Now, we've talked about this before, John, whether you go with shotgun mics like my Sennheiser MKE400, which is over there right now recording directly into the R5, or whether you're using a lavalier microphone. I like the lavalier microphone because as I move around, or as my son moves around, the audio is going to be pretty consistent. And again, the quality is going to be much better because it's recording into the base unit. And I have nothing against wireless mics, but for it to be a good, high-quality wireless mic, I want it to record into a separate unit, not into the camera, because by recording into the camera, I'm now dealing with a preamp. And, what's the point of spending $300, $400 on a wireless mic if you're handicapped by the preamp in the camera? So that's my main thought there. Now, one of the other things I'm currently recording, I'm trying things a little differently because the 50mm RF 50mm is a little bit loud. I'm recording my audio here, but the second source I'm recording using the Sennheiser, and I've actually got it plugged into the top of my Canon 70D just to hold it up. And hopefully that'll pick up some of the ambient sound, the birds, to give this audio a bit more of a full sound. The Tascam does narrow things down a little bit. It's great for interviews, but when you're doing stuff like this outside, it doesn't capture the fullness of the sound. And what I do in post is this in-camera audio, which is what it is, I usually drop the dB to about -7, -8. And so if there's trucks or anything else coming by, it softens those and you hear them in the background, but it doesn't take away from the audio. And looking back at your question, advantages and disadvantages, I think the biggest advantage is, of course, having complete control over your audio, not relying on the camera's preamp, and being able to set your settings in a base unit that you can use time and time again, so you don't have to fiddle with it in post or apply a preset. And so for me, for my workflow, that's what I think is the best about this. And when you start to get to professional units, they're not going to want to record directly into the camera. You are recording the audio source separately. These guys holding these big boom mics for movies, they have this huge thing on their hip. They're probably not so huge anymore, but they record the audio in there and then you sync it later in post, which is pretty easy to do. Kenny Peters asks, would you wait for RF Super telephotos or just run a recent EF Super telephoto with an adapter? Serious hobbyist asking for a friend. Yes, to the whatever you want to do. The EF lenses still produce really great results. If it's a modern lens, if it's fast, if you're shooting for video, you want a quiet focus motor. That's the main thing there. Is it fast enough? But the EF quality lenses on the R system, they're terrific. I was shooting with the EF 50mm for the longest time, and the RF is definitely sharper. But you know what I miss about the EF version? The focus motor was a lot less noticeable. I used to be able to record the audio from the Canon internally itself and use it in post, but this lens makes too much noise. I can't use it, so I have to use a shotgun mic externally. But yeah, I'm even using EFS lenses. I got the EFS 10 to 18mm, the 18 to 135mm. These are creative tools. As an artist, as somebody who's producing content, ask yourself, what is the look that you're trying to achieve? And here's another thing too, you can get a great bargain with these EF lenses. When I sold my 50mm, I sold it for $1,000 Canadian, or about $750 US. And you know how much the RF, excuse me, you know how much that RF costs. It's, you're what, $2,000, $3,000, what is it? 3,000 Canadian, so I think it's around $2,200, $2,300 US. That's a huge difference. So yeah, get those EF lenses. Just test them out before you buy them if they're used, but don't feel afraid of using them. Just if they're really old, you want to be aware of the focus motor, how loud it is if you're doing video. You want to see how fast they are. But there's plenty of reviews online where you can get that information. So yeah, go for it. EF lenses are terrific, especially the L series. The Village Mayor asks, if you peruse through online photography stores, many camera brands such as Canon, Sony, and Panasonic still sell camcorders and can be as expensive as the RP body. Why would somebody purchase a camcorder, and who would be the target market? Wouldn't the ordinary filmmaker be happy with a camcorder and use the smartphone for photos? Wow, Tim, that's a brilliant question. And before I got the R5, like I said, I spent about 3 years looking at different options, and I looked at the camcorder market. I pretty much discounted any of the cheap ones. They just don't produce good results. When you sort of pan, you get that sort of ghosting look. So you don't save any money by going to the camcorder market. You get what you pay for. So if you want really good high quality video without any ghosting, without any weird effects, and you want 4K 120 or 4K 30, you're going to spend an awful lot of money. Now, one of the cameras I was looking at was the Panasonic HCX1. And this was incredible. It had like a 20 times optical zoom. The quality was very good. It was 4K 30. It didn't do like 4K 120, I believe, or anything like that. Or, sorry, my ears are getting cold. But the thing was huge. It met most of my capabilities. And when I went to the store and I was ready to buy it, and then I realized, well, first of all, this has been out for 2 years. It's really huge. And something else entered my mind as well. When I travel, I like to take my camera everywhere I go. And believe it or not, there are countries, there are museums, there are places where no video. They won't let you do video. They're fine with you taking photos, but you start taking video and it changes the scene, it changes the dynamic. people don't like you taking video. It's irritating. And like I said, there are places that won't let you take video. So having a stills hybrid camera with really good video is you're able to go in more places and take more video, and they're smaller, more compact. So there's that aspect of it for me. That's what I really like. Plus, I still, even though I only take photos 5% of the time, when I do take photos, I want really good portraits. I want really good landscapes. And there are some camcorders that allow you to take stills. A lot don't. And the stills quality on a lot of camcorders is much worse than the video quality on the stills hybrid cameras. But I don't want to say that, excuse me, cinema cameras aren't good. I think the C70 is a great camera. If I had a greater budget, I'd probably have a cinema camera, either the FX6 or the C70, because they do video so much better. They have built-in ND filters. Everything about them is around video, and even the autofocus works so much better. One of the things that captivated me about the Panasonic HCX1 is they showed you a scene where they were tracking a cyclist, and then all of a sudden this huge truck went by the cyclist. You know what the autofocus system did? It kept the focus on where it thought that object, the cyclist, was going to be. So when the truck went away, it was still locked right onto the cyclist. So the autofocus system is designed for video. It's better. You've got other features on these camcorders that are better. But I'm this is kind of strange too, because I'm now more of a professional. I have a YouTube channel. I'm producing content all the time, and I could justify at some point having multiple cameras. But when I first had my capabilities for the R5, well, capabilities, the R5 was the winner. It was the one I selected. I wasn't planning on making a living out of this. This was just something I wanted to do for myself. So I was looking for one camera to rule them all. And a stills hybrid camera, in my view, offered, it met most of the video capabilities I was looking for, and all the stills capabilities I was looking for. But when I went to video cameras, camcorders, the stills weren't very good. And you know what? Back then, the iPhone 12 wasn't around. I think it was the iPhone 6. It wasn't quite good enough, and maybe I'm an old fogey. Maybe part of this is irrational, and I just think, you know what? I feel that connection to the stills, but and this is why you have to come up with capability charts, Tim. You need to identify all the capabilities you actually need, and then identify which are mandatory, create a heat map, and that helps you get through the emotional, the subjective stuff to identify what's best for you. But honestly, for me, for my channel, I would honestly love to have something like a cinema camera for the YouTube channel, and then use the R5 for my run and gun stuff. But, you know, I've got revenue from the channel that allows me to do that. As a regular person, it'd be too expensive for me to be able to do that. But Tim's question is the last one of the day. I just want to talk to you about a couple of things and go behind the scenes just for a few minutes. The reason I'm shooting outside is I wanted to tackle a couple of different things. I got my R5 back. I want to shoot it with C-Log, and I wanted to see how well I could expose myself using the histogram first, Gamma K, and then setting the Zebras to 70%. Now, the only problem is once I've set all this stuff, if the lighting changes a whole lot, because the sun is starting to shine on me a little bit more, but it's to this angle here, it's at a degree like this, so this, I could probably measure, that's around probably, what, 30-something degrees? So I'm able, the lighting shouldn't be too bad, but once I set these things, I can't change it, I can't monitor it. I do have Camera Connect here, but the one thing it doesn't show me is the Zebras. The one thing I would want to see, because I can get up every few questions, go around, change things if I have to. The one thing I really wish Canon would have is an exposure lock, where what it would do is, based on the focus point, it would focus on that same spot to ensure that your focus on your face was consistent throughout the filming. And Sony does that with the A7S III, and it's terrific. It works so well. But there's nothing like that in the Canon EOS R5. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is the last time I shot outside, it was snowing a little bit, and that was causing the autofocus to go crazy. The problem hasn't happened since, and I've shot in similar temperatures. But I did notice one thing, and I forgot the setting. I wrote it down right here. It's called Movie Servo Autofocus Track Sensitivity, and I dropped it all the way down to -3. Why? It's not snowing. It's not supposed to, but it's supposed to snow around 1 o'clock. So you know how weather forecasts are accurate, right? I thought I'd set it to -3, so if anything did pop up, the sensitivity is a whole lot less. So if something goes in front of the frame, my hands or snowflakes or anything like that, it should lock onto me. I shouldn't have any problems with autofocus. I don't even know right now. I won't know until I take this into post and take a look at it after work, because I'm shooting right now on my lunchtime. So that's one thing that you can use to certainly help with the autofocus. But the auto exposure lock, oh, I hope they add that as a feature in a firmware update. It would really, really help me out. But that's everything I wanted to talk to you about in this behind the scenes. Again, the contest, if you didn't watch that video where, I can't remember which viewer submitted the question asking me how I feel, but go ahead and look at that video, because I talked about a contest. I'm thinking of having another go at the spring contest, a way to get everybody's spirits upbeat. I'm going to challenge you to go out there and capture spring as it's starting to happen. Depending on where you are in the world, probably spring is in full bloom. I know in Vancouver on the west coast, my mother's plants are already coming up. They're already flowering in other parts of the world, whereas here in Ontario, we're still deadlocked in the middle of winter with about a foot of snow, fresh snow on the ground. But the really great thing this year, instead of just an honorable mention, I'm actually going to be offering up a prize, and it's going to be an Angel Bird prize. So go ahead and take a look at that comment. What I'm going to do next week, towards the end of the week, is I'm going to have a video where I'm going to talk about the prize. I'm going to talk about the terms and conditions of the contest and how I'm going to select a winner, all that wonderful stuff. That's coming up next week. But that's it for this week. Thank you so much for watching The Ordinary Filmmaker. Don't forget to subscribe for your chance to win 2 Angel Bird 128GB AV Pro MK2 V90 SD cards. Mouth is definitely frozen. You could also win, or not also win, part of that prize bundle, the Angel Bird prize bundle, is a dual UHS-2 SD card reader. And then the other prize bundle is a Ulanzi light. I can't move my mouth. Oh my goodness. The other prize bundle is a Ulanzi LED light package with accent lights, underwater lights, and various flat panel lights that you can use for lighting your subject. Or it's really good for starting a YouTube channel if you have a very, very small budget. I'll be awarding these 2 prize bundles to 2 lucky subscribers once the channel reaches 30,000 subscribers. And then, as you know, every 10,000 subscribers after that, I'll be offering up new prize bundles all the way up to 100,000. And that huge significant milestone where I get a nice YouTube plaque, well, that's when I'm going to be awarding a brand new Canon EOS R5 full frame mirrorless camera to one lucky viewer. Now that bombshell, well, the contest was really the bombshell, right? Thanks for watching The Ordinary Filmmaker. I do appreciate it. We'll see you again soon.